and trying to reconcile some of these figures from way back when the budget book was written. And I'm having real difficulties in actually reconciling anything. And this is one of the points that I think we've made several times, is that when revised budgets are put forward, you never actually know exactly where it's been revised from, whether it's a revision of a revision of a revision, or is it kind of like, you know, is there a line in the sand that we can refer back to understand what the changes were? So that's one of the issues that I have. The other issue is changing from hundreds of thousands to thousands to, you know, the whole paper is just full of those. So you don't know whether it's millions or it's hundreds of thousands. There are all these internal adjustments. Paragraph 2.4, paragraph 2.3, paragraph 2.5. There are other things that are explained in minutiae about what and how 126,000 or 30,000 or 42,000 was achieved, but no real explanation of these internal adjustments. So that's the second point. And the very last point I just wanted to make, and it is something that we have asked for, which is at 6.5 and the borrowing, and there are two loans that are held right at the top. Both end date was 20th of January, 27th of February, so we haven't had a reply as to what's happened to those and kind of what percentage rate is the new loans one presumes have been negotiated. In terms of just general, I just feel that there are places where there has been overspend, and quite understandably, yes, you know, it's interest rates, it's 101 other things that are affecting, but there are also underspends. And my kind of struck line for all of this is it's underspend and under delivery in lots of areas. And I do appreciate that some of the spend will incur VAT and that will be exempt input tax. And I just wonder whether some of this capital projects are lingering because you're worried about the amount of input tax that it's going to incur and whether it's going to push you to partial exemption in a big way. So those are several things in there, but I thought it was worth just rounding it all up.
Thank you. On the inflation issue, in common with just about every authority in the country, we'd love to know what the final impact of that is going to be on the capital programme. The inflation is different in different sectors, and it depends on what you're buying and when you're buying it. But I attend meetings of the District Council Network and a member of the Finance Committee, and those are the sort of issues that are being raised there all the time. And interestingly, one Conservative leader on that group said, you know, that at this point in time, just going on to your capital programme points, that no council is likely to want to be spending too much on capital during this era of uncertainty. So I'm not too worried about that. I mean, the over and underspending is something that happens again throughout the year and has done ever since I've been councillor, because you can only predict what you'll spend in February when you set a budget for the following year, following municipal year, and there will always be changes to that. on county council, the children's services was overspent by almost 2 million, but a lot of that was offset in other areas, and particularly in treasury management due to the change in interest rates. And finally, your comment about not understanding whether things are in millions or not, those which on page 13, those are the actual figures. But as we progress, you'll see that you're showing hundreds of thousands, 3 zeros at the end. So I didn't find it difficult to follow the report, and I thought it was a good report. Steve.
Thank you, David, and thank you, Shara, once again for your comments. I mean, I'm going to ask Amira to respond in main to particularly the point in regards to loans and policies like that. In terms of unspent and undelivered, it's guys, but Shara would probably disagree with you on that. I mean, I'm looking at the headline figures in terms of the, if you like, underspent or whatever, and actually some of it's really good news, you know, we've got good results with regards to delivery in terms of sports and tourism and culture, and in terms of some of the overspends, perhaps it's looking at the cost of living and what we're doing with regards to that, particularly as we've always said, the challenges with regards to the pressures homelessness, and Tim and the team are doing a particularly excellent job of trying to manage that, but it does take time. It is a process, and unfortunately, it's homelessness is, as I've said in the past, one of the biggest threats in terms of financial stability and sustainability of the authority, because it's kind of completely out of our control. But at the same time, it's one of those ones which we provide as services as we do what we can and continue to do so. But there's always that threat, because it might be a little bit taken out of our hands, and we're subject to the whims and variances of others. But we do continue to do what we can. In terms of some of the capital projects, again, I completely agree with David. At this stage, you know, we've taken effective action where all indications, I suppose, are that inflation is artificially high at the moment. Dare I say, because of some national decisions that we made, but we can perhaps talk about that on a campaign platform. The inflationary costs and other disabilities are particularly high at the moment, but they are expected to lower, go down. And of course, with the cost of borrowing being so high, it's only prudent for us to make sure that we continue to deliver best value for money. And so some of those capital projects are being reprofiled. They'll all be delivered, but only when circumstances are such that it is appropriate for us to be spending that resource and that limited control that we have in terms of the borrowing that we can do. But of course, we will be prioritising health and safety matters and health and safety concerns. And some of the projects that we've got underway, and a lot of the capital projects we've got underway are doing incredibly well, and I'm expecting to start with you, including, I'm sure everybody is delighted to see the bandstand, which is opening in April. So, as I say, I will hand over to Amira on those other issues. But again, I would just reinforce, as you've done, I suppose, section 1.5 and 1.4 is very much giving us the issues across the board and across councils in terms of inflation, energy costs, staffing, and other pressures that all authorities face. And that's why I'll hand over to Amira.
Thank you, Councillor Ford. I think one might, looking at my notes, there are a couple of items that I'm happy to address. One of them, in terms of capital programme, section 5.2 of the report provides you the position update on the capital programme as audited free. So this report is actually covering the financial position of the council of revenue, has revenue and capital programme as at the end of December. And I think actually that really answers your question in relation to the borrowing and that's temporary debt, which there are two items there that you'd ask for an update. And of course, again, this report is covering the period those borrowings will be then transferred to new arrangements of this period. So you will have an updated position in the after Q3's report, but we are more than happy to provide you with additional information outside of this meeting. In relation to internal adjustments, as I mentioned, as part of the revised budget, the council approved use of £1.6 million of reserves, and what we have done is to reallocate those reserves to the service areas. The reason that they have been allocated in a way that is a bond line allocation is that we didn't want to lose the transparency of the report in terms of where the additional costs are being incurred, so that the council has got visibility of the cost of living pressures and the increased inflation on its budget.
Thank you, Mayor. Anybody else?
I did want to ask a question. It's slightly unusual, it's my report, but I'm happy to raise it. Perhaps with clarity more than anything else, which is, as everybody is aware, something I've been particularly proud of is with regards to the recovery and stabilisation for repeating the cross-party, particularly those board meetings and those panel meetings that we have been having, and this huge amount of work that this authority has done to help stabilise the finances of both this authority, frankly, after the effects of COVID. I think almost all councils did that. It's all pretty and sensible. There was, of course, an extensive list of those savings, particularly for 2022. And I know that there will be one in 2022/2023. And I was going to ask Rob and indeed Mira if we could go through those line by line for recovery and stabilisation board to make sure we're finding those savings and doing anything we can to increase the level of savings and indeed the targets. If that's something we could commit to ready for the next recovery and stabilisation panel that we have.
John, this is the last one. Mayor's comment.
Yeah, that's there. Thanks, Steve. As you know, there's been a lot of work going on this last quarter to try and hit the targets of the RNS programme. The board will be aware that we overachieved in certain areas. So the last financial year, we overachieved to reduce the overall total we achieved this year, so it's good news. But there's always an opportunity to go through it in forensic detail, and what we'll do is do that at year end and make sure we report back in that form to the next RNS board at the beginning of the next administration.
Nothing further from the question.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? In that case, thank you, Steve, for drawing attention to the cost of housing and providing support to those homes that, like the children's services at East Sussex, the demand-led services, they will cost what they will cost. But it is a problem across the UK that the increasing cost of homelessness and numbers of people sadly without a roof over their head. We're asked to note the report. Is that wish of government? Agreed. Thank you very much. Let's move on. And Peter, it's the safety safeguard should have a report.
Thank you very much, Chair. Just a very brief comment from also to Mr. Jones, just to help square it. All of the projects I think listed under the 6 priorities are really worthwhile and are doing fantastic things within our town. And there's so many committed, dynamic people working in different multiple agencies and people involved in this. So I think it's really fantastic. And I just like to express my thanks to Mr. Jones for we pass on to him. So thank you, Robert. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith, for the evening, everybody. Yes, this paper just sets out the annual activities of the partnership over the past year, which is meant regularly as a strategic group each quarter and monthly as the local joint partnership group that looks at local risks and issues. Partnerships deliver the limits of funded project and programme activities and strategic work against 6 priorities that include roads themselves, promoting welcoming spaces, reduce crime and ASB, tackling violent crime, hate crime, domestic and sexual abuse, supporting the street community and mobility ASB, and reducing antisocial driving on the borough's roads. They just sets a quick review of crime trends across the year. And I think in summary, I think what we're seeing is some increases in acquisitive crime, order events of public place violent crime, and some reductions in social behaviour. And what we're seeing here is a return to the position pre-COVID. So the crimes that I mentioned have increased as the commercial nighttime economy has opened up, and antisocial behaviour has reduced. Saw increases during the pandemic because people were living in pleasant proximity. There was some increases in youth ASB, and of course, many of the COVID breach it turns out since recorded against captured ASB, they've all gone into reverse. In terms of just picking out one or two of the projects that have been undertaken over the past year or so, in terms of tackling hate crime and domestic and sexual abuse, we've directly done the projects with Change Grow Live that are offering safety advices and other advice to those able to stay in their homes at risk, just make them feel safer and link automatically to police alert systems that are sold for medium risk victims of domestic abuse. The high risk victims are supported in other ways. We've supported some arts programs and a project through Define Sports as well that's targeted at those coming through a mental health pathway that are at risk of exploitation. And the arts program is suppressing working with victims of various types of hate crime through our rehabilitation classes. Some really good projects and really helping some people in need across the town. In terms of addressing antisocial driving, with the public space protection order is kicking back in March, and we've given lots of work to get the signage up last year, and working closely with Sussex Police will be enforcing that with various operations across the spring and summer. In lots of work with the Serious Violence Partnerships, with organisations led by Sussex Police, and really driving towards going into addressing new serious violence duties that all safety partnerships will have to sign up to over the next year or so, and working with our partners and other districts to get that in place. And we've been working with the Kingdom Work Trust to re-establish weekend safe space in Seaside that's being funded. Where possibly trying to work and funding from other places to match funding. The fourth gate has to get to the police and crime, which each year, which I'm pleased to say has been fully spent as of last month. Thank you.
Thank you, Oliver. Thank you for running us through that list of priorities. I'm sure they're the sort of things that our residents wish to be addressing. As you detailed this really good work that's taking place in each one. Any questions for Steve?
Thank you. I just wanted to do a quick couple of things about my commentary, but also to notify Simon that I probably should have declared an interest, but a non-prejudicial one for the faculty. Because I know as soon as I said about Kingdom Way Trust and support, I realised that BID actually helped co-fund that as well, so I should probably flag that. And of course, how closely we work with the team there to help provide that support. So I thought it was Simon for not noticing soon, but just a better. Really excellent work, Oliver, and the team. I know how hard yourself and Gordon and the play partnership, you, Becky Jackson, and others are having with regards to this. With my slight town centre hat on, I know there's been a number of issues with regards to perhaps youth ASB, and I know that parents have been somewhat surprised by perhaps the level, but also the school strikes issues with regards to that. I know that there's a plan in place working with the police on that, in particular operational funds and other activities, just for the benefit of both perhaps in the women I suppose we may be confusing to listening tonight. You can perhaps expand on some of the work that the police are doing alongside us in terms of, making sure there's regular patrols on strike days, a visible town centre presence to start addressing the issues. Thank you.
Yes, there have been a number of sort of place over the past few weeks in relation to those issues, and we have sat down. Well, there's a number of groups working to look at the town centre and the issues being raised. At those, it's looking for the legislation resource for the school strike days tomorrow and of the next 2 days this week. One thing that I've also discussed with Chief Inspector Lewis is whether or not we can utilise some additional £10,000 funding that we have been passed down from the Save Streets for projects which initially I was going to allocate to looking at this work with high needs households. The priorities have changed in relation to the town centre and the issues that you mentioned. It's whether or not we could replace some diversion activities that take place at or around the peaks of the issues that we've been observing, and whether or not we can work with youth outreach team to identify some of those involved and get them involved in some recreational activities over the months leading up to the summer. So that's a live discussion I'm having. And
Thank you, Oliver. I'm glad you mentioned work with East Sussex, and East Sussex, I think, beyond, because some of the groups that have been causing difficulties come from other places, other towns, that were travelling circus that has hit and a number of towns, antisocial behaviour and violent behaviour between groups, and that hasn't been limited to East Sussex, so it's up coming from Council West Sussex as well. So thank you very much for the work you're doing in that regard. Any other comments? As Simon's reminded us, we're against amendments report, and so this is an objection to if you happen to do so. And move to the final item on the agenda, which is the Eastbourne Growth Plan. Robert, do you want to join us?
Well, good evening, everybody. It does help to have an end of term feel about this meeting. Some of us won't be here in May, and some of us might be here in May. So it's interesting time scale. I would like to just talk about this Turn Up the Eastbourne Growth Plan, because I do feel it recognises a more realistic tone regarding the long overdue preparation of the Eastbourne Borough Council's local plan. For context, Eastbourne has been without local plans since 2018, when its previous obligation agreed with the planning inspector was to build 240 homes annually. In the report, there is recognition that not having an up-to-date local plan is seen as a considerable risk. Yes, it is. So, what has the council been doing since 2018 to mitigate this risk, which continues until we have an agreed local plan? Although we haven't received an apology for the ludicrous claims about conservative plans and conservative bulldozers within local damn literature, the authors recognise the process in this report and refer to the significant constraints, strategic constraints to development that would justify a lower level of provision. That has been true throughout the period. But the Secretary of State, Michael Gove, and the Minister of State for Housing, Rachel McLean, firstly confirmed that it is for the Council to decide which sites should or should not be included within the housing plan. It was never necessary for a site such as Fisherman Green to be included in the plan. The Conservative councillors support the vocal protesters regarding this and other sites, which have been put up as unsounded by the Lib Dem administration. The Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill currently going through Parliament will further enhance the power of local communities with a greater say in what is built in their neighbourhood. The incoming cabinet for Eastbourne Borough Council will have the responsibility to complete the outstanding local plan speedily to meet the aspirations of the residents and protect Eastbourne from undesirable development. One small note, I noted today, and I've discussed with the head of planning, the fact that the planning application for the police station next door, I think expired yesterday. So perhaps we can have a more desirable development there. But finally, what I would like to do, David, is just wish you well in your retirement. And let it start well at Cheltenham. Thank you very much.
Your Roberts, I've got to say, it was a good day today. I would like to just pick up a couple of those points there. First of the timeline, yes, the timeline has been frustrating, but not only for us. It's for all the houses, and that brings me to the second point where you were saying conservative plans. The plans, not conservative plans from yourself and the local Conservatives, because I recognise that you would be vocally opposed, as I have, to housing numbers. But the plans that come from national level and the targetry has been beyond our ability to address and to deliver. And that's true of a lot of South Eastern councils, irrespective of political colour. I've heard Conservative leaders, Labour leaders, Liberal Democrat leaders explain exactly the same policy, problems. And there are councils of all shades who, as a result of that, are behind the timeline that they are supposed to deliver on in having local plans. The Fishman's Green site, I was delighted that following the notice of voting that Stephen put to the council, Caroline Ansell asked a question in the House, which solicited a reply from Michael Gove, which enabled us to remove Fishman's Green. I'll ask, after I ask Colin to introduce the paragraph, Lee Palmer just to explain why that had to be included in the plans, and the other sites which I see as sensitive. I would very much like to see those other sites removed. I recognise that Officer of the Brigade will explain why that cannot be the case immediately. And I know that other members probably would not wish to say their discretion by saying that they should be removed. But as you point out, some of us won't be here after May. I'm one of those. I don't have a discretion to matter. Colin.
Thank you, David. Just running through the recommendations first on page 41. I think we've all been, I don't know, maybe all fed up with those because we keep seeing the same things come up on. The significant one obviously is number 4, because Fisherman's Green site has been withdrawn. But what I'd like to draw your attention to at this stage is on page 51, paragraph 9.2. The local plan will assist in delivering a number of priorities set out in the council's corporate plan. So we're just trying to get away from just focusing on these individual sites that have been banded around and messed about. What we're trying to do is deliver new homes for people, and that's got to be an objection for an object for every council in the land is to deliver new homes for people. We're transitioning to the delivery of new carbon neutral and environmentally friendly homes. Talk to the chairman, current chairman of planning about that, and I know that's one of his main beefs is that we've got to move in that direction. Helping to maintain the heritage environment. Well, heritage is something that seems to have landed with me of late. I think it's been added on my job description now. On the first page, so that's encouraging. Encouraging cycling and using public transport more through improved infrastructure. Enhancing the biodiversity of public and open spaces and efficient process in the planning application. Because what worries me is that these are the top objectives that we've got when we're putting it together our local plan, and it all seems to have got mired and messed about just on that list of sites that are going in. Okay, so that's my stance on it. Perhaps I could pass over to Lee now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for setting the scene to the effect that the local plan is more than just accountability. it had a number of high-level objectives that it needs to meet. So thank you for setting the scene. Now, Cabinet and cross-party will appreciate and understand that local plan making is a mandatory function of local authorities. We have to deliver a local plan. We're mandated by legislation. We have consulted on the growth strategy, and the important thing, again, for cabinet approval and cross-party approval, is the recognition that the standard methodology identifies housing need with constraints of. So it is purely a figure that is extrapolated out to gives housing need with constraints of. As we know from the report, that is 738 per annum, 738 houses per annum. We are very keen, willing and able to go into that for cabinet and cross-party on a lower figure. That is also highlighted in the report, identifies that it's 320 per annum. That falls further south of Fisherman's Green, falling away to around 316 per annum. And as I say, we are very confident that officers can support that ask. Less than half of the housing need based on the standard methodology. One thing for Cabinet and cross-party to recognise is that 80% of that 316 per annum will be on brownfield land. So we're not carving up the countryside, we are delivering the regeneration of previously developed land. Also recognising that in terms of employment growth, we can only deliver 53,000 square metres of employment space against a target of 76,000 square metres of employment space. But that does recognise that there are constraints that we have to adhere. And in terms of the chair's points around unsensitive sites, well, they will be reviewed, and further consolidation of those sites will inform the process. And it is not an officer process, it is the process that will inform the process as to whether they stay in or fall out. So I thank the chair's insertion of that paragraph, because it is a timely reminder that sites that are not brownfield have to go through further rigor, and we will do that before bringing the next iteration of the regulation 19 to Cabinet and full council late 23, early 24. And through the committee cycle, you will have ultimate sanction as to the content and further onward progression of that local plan through the Secretary of State. So just to recap, we are very keen and happy to go to that for you, Cabinet and cross-party, on a much lower figure than the standard methodology figure, and recognition that 80% of that figure is on brownfield land. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Lee, and my thanks to you and your colleagues for working companies to work through what is a difficult process. Because as you rightly said, Colin, with strong attention as well, this isn't just about housing, it's about allocation of land for other purposes, for recreational purposes, for business purposes. And one of the things in a town which is constrained by the sea and the South Downs and other barriers as Eastbourne is trying to find enough land to meet all of those needs. One thing that somebody much wiser than myself once said is they're not creating any more land. And so it is a real challenge. Can I ask if there are any other comments? Steve?
I wasn't going to speak so much tonight. There you go. I just had a query before letting go. So I do absolutely accept some of the comments made by colleagues tonight. But it's not just focusing perhaps on 2 sites, it's about looking at the whole picture and the big picture. But one of the things I did want to comment on is that I was delighted that we were able to remove Fisherman's Green from council, and some of those other sites are controversial, but David, you've alluded to and others have. I was reflecting on the response from the Secretary of State, though, because I think it is important because of the question that's posed by Councillor Smart, and that is with regards to the policy and the look of it. Now, when I was doing my research before the council, when I was reading these first, in order for a local plan to be accepted by the planning inspector, no stone could be left unturned, and you had to try and hit that housing figure, whatever that arbitrary target was. And I know Lee had been very vocal in the past about the absurdity perhaps of those housing targets, particularly for a town like Eastbourne when we were bordered by the City National Park and we've got Wilders as neighbours. And so in order for us to be able to present them, and we had to go through that consultation period, we had to look at everything, we had to ask the public for their feedback, and again, very grateful to the public to do so. Caroline, very helpfully, I do generally made that submission to Parliament and asked Michael Gove the question about sanctions, which we were particularly concerned about, because we know there are sanctions if you can penalise whatever. The really interesting thing is Michael Gove's response, which I've got here, which is the decision to pay additional to this council's fine, so the council can easily take it out. The changes that we have made in the levelling up bill, the new generation bill, would allow to do so. But that's the bill that hasn't yet been enacted by Parliament. So I guess I'm not really asking the question more than anything else, but just dare say a little slogan there, which is the fact that what could have in sense of clarity is Michael Gove saying that you can take it out, which we haven't done so, that's really helpful. But actually it's still part of the phase of the bill that's going through Parliament at the moment. And so it's not as defined as perhaps has been alluded to by our members perhaps.
Steve, any other comments? We're asked to agree the recommendations on page 41. Is that your wish?
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That concludes services to the listeners with so before this evening at the final meeting of this administration, barring any urgent business that comes up in the next 4 weeks. So can I take this opportunity to thank officers and members across party for their contributions to what has been a particularly difficult 4 years with a number of challenges which are out with any local council's control, whether they come from the national level or international level, such as the pandemic. And I'm particularly proud of the way that Eastbourne's tackled. Thank you.